Dear Princess Celestia, where do I begin? Applebuck season remains my favorite episode of My Little Pony. As a person who really appreciates this show for the high density of things that it has to offer, it would be correct to assume that the more I like an episode, the more things there are to say about it. However, what makes this episode amazing is very straightforward. Whereas my enjoyment of Pinkie Pie episodes comes from analyzing her down to the core and finding the deeper meanings that the show can't reach, my enjoyment of Applejack is as straightforward as her character. Applejack is my second favorite pony after Twilight Sparkle, and both of them are the most straightforward, easily understood characters in the show. The reason I love them is that their personalities are so enjoyable on a basic level, probably because they both fail in such intense ways while being smart enough to realize it themselves. All of the ponies fail in big ways. Pinkie Pie doesn't understand other ponies' way of thinking very well and has trouble empathizing with them, i.e. she can be a pest. She's also probably got some kind of depression or anxiety disorder. Rarity and Fluttershy are both paranoid. Fluttershy is reclusive and shy, Rarity is bombastic and dramatic, and both of them tend to get pretty lost in their own heads. Rainbow Dash is full of herself and doesn't think things through at all. Besides Fluttershy, I think that those ponies are relatively unaware of their problems. Rainbow Dash sees herself as flawless, Pinkie Pie doesn't bother to think about it, and Rarity is a drama queen. Fluttershy understands that she has a problem and works to combat it sometimes, but her default mode is still pretty much hikikomori. So this brings us to Applejack and Twilight Sparkle, who are the most self-aware and grounded characters in the show. Applejack is stubborn and a bit closed-minded, but she seems to be aware of this. Even here in Applebuck season, she knows going into it that she's making a mistake, but her pride is too strong to admit it, and the deeper she gets in, the harder it is for her to admit what an idiot she's being. It's a massive failure that works so well because she's an otherwise sensible pony. This is something we've all probably experienced at some point, unwillingness to abandon our past feelings and actions and admit that we're stupid and wrong. I know it's something that I've done countless times. Twilight is similar to Applejack in her self-awareness, but I also think that Twilight has some personality disorders that she hasn't come to grips with, which factor in a lot of the time, especially her paranoia regarding Princess Celestia. Sure, there are some ways that Applejack isn't self-aware, mostly in how she tends to see herself as knowing what she's doing and being unwilling to take advice from others, but again, this is always something that she has to come to grips with by the end of the episode, and she gets better at it each step of the way. This doesn't make Applejack a better or more interesting character, nor does it make her my favorite. I love her just for her innate qualities. My point is simply that anyone can see why this episode is excellent. I don't have to bust it wide open and suck all the juices out like I would with a Pinkie Pie episode. Applejack's failure is simple, and the episode's comedy is simple. It's just done with such a density and brilliance that it's as good as the show's writing ever gets. If I got into everything about this episode that I loved, it would mostly just be, look at this thing, isn't it great? And yet, I don't hate the idea of doing that. Sometimes I just want to gush. Egoraptor style. Dude, isn't it awesome how Applejack is like supposed to be uneducated and stuff, and she rejects Big Macintosh's fancy mathematics, which, by the way, one pony plus hundreds of apple trees, yeah, that doesn't add up. And yet she uses the phrase bumper crop, which sent me to the dictionary, because like, she's not educated about things like math and fashion and high society, but she knows her craft super well, and actually has like a really sharp wit, so the reality is that she's a highly intelligent pony, whose knowledge simply is in another place. And isn't it insane how the animation quality made such a gigantic leap from episode 3? I mean, in that episode, then the ponies usually had neutral expressions and poses most of the time, and there weren't a lot of big changes to the basic character models, but now in this episode it totally opens up and there's like a shitload of original animations. Many of the animations and a ton of the facial expressions are exclusive to this episode, and I don't only mean the standard Applejack faces with extra lines under the eyes, but I do love those. Isn't it intense how they originally intended for Applejack to be hitting her head on trees to knock down the apples, and that's how they conceptualized this episode? But then they realized how fucking insane and dangerous that sounded, and created this totally awesome concept of applebucking, which became an integral part of the show's world building. Also, how they still have Applejack hit her head a couple of times, and those mark the noted progressions on her road to insanity. Isn't it a weird inconsistency how Applejack tells Big Macintosh that she can do all the work in a day, but then a week passes between her rounding up all the cows and then attending the award ceremony according to Rainbow Dash? But it's even better this way, because Applejack probably hasn't slept in a week, and I have friends who do this sometimes, and they act exactly like Applejack does here. The speech scene is such a great character exercise, starting with Twilight organizing her cards in this totally OCD way, and getting all nice and prepared to speak, but then the inconsiderate Rainbow Dash interrupts her, followed by Pinkie Pie being ridiculous, and then by Fluttershy, who honestly isn't that considerate anyways, she's just really shy, so this still says something about her character. Isn't the constant dry comedy surrounding Applejack's tired state just the funniest shit you've ever seen? Her dialogue, her performance, and every little thing, like the horrible grinding as she drags that statue away, and there's no music for most of this whole scene, just watch it. And then there's my favorite moment in the entire show, this one.
She seemed fine to me. Woo!
And oh my god, why is Twilight teleporting around for no reason? Okay, calm down. Man, I love how when Applejack tries to help Pinkie bake, she totally doesn't understand why Pinkie's using these ridiculous ingredients, but she's too tired to question it and is just like, what the fuck am I doing? And then she even rationalized wheat worms as fancy talk for earthworms because that's what exhaustion does to you. No, not baked goods, baked bads. Bunny rampage, alliteration jokes, Applejack passing out in her tipped over cart. I mean, seriously, these aren't just funny, these are classic jokes to me. We're talking about my favorite episode of my favorite show. Can you see where I'm coming from here? At the end, Twilight makes you think, man, she could do Applejack's job in minutes. What a godmother. I'm real glad the town gave me the Pony 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 award, but the real reward is having celery. Yay, I was finally able to upload my damn Applebuck season review. Hopefully this one doesn't get taken down. On my last video, I asked you guys to suggest to me what I should do next, and you pretty much suggested all but 4 episodes of season 1, so I'll probably cover as many of them as possible. The ones that got the most votes are the Cutie Mark Chronicles, which is hardly surprising, Suited for Excess, and Green Isn't Your Color, which are a little bit more surprising. I only got 1 vote for Owl's Well That Ends Well, Storm of the Century, and The Best Night Ever, and the pilots, each of which I may or may not do depending on if I rewatch it and decide that there's enough to talk about. I do want to cover every episode of this show eventually, it's just that I'm trying to cut out as many ones that I don't really feel like doing before I get to season 2, which I really am excited about. So I will definitely do the Cutie Mark Chronicles, Suited for Success, Green Isn't Your Color, Sonic Rainboom, probably Call of the Cutie, and definitely Look Before You Sleep before I move on to season 2, and then whether or not I feel like it, I might do Dragonshy, Bridal Gossip, Storm of the Century, All's Well That Ends Well, The Showstoppers, The Stairmaster, The Best Night Ever, The Pilots, and Winter Wrap Up. So I look forward to all of those. Also, I've gotten several offers for people to draw me a pony Sona to use for these videos, where they'll draw me the full set of expressions that I need. So as soon as that happens, I will be changing format again, and we can all possibly be happy with it. And by the way, if you still haven't gone to my website, you should totally check that out, cause it's got all kinds of cool stuff.